I was doing a little bit of street photography this weekend, and I just taken a couple of pictures, and a security guard standing outside of a store, Pal's bookstore in Portland. He saw me taking the pictures, and he asked me as I'm walking by, "How'd your shots turn out?" And then he sort of like aggressively like motions to my camera and kind of makes right a gesture of like, show me, right? And he looks at the back of my camera, and I show him the back of my camera, and there's nothing to see because it's not a digital camera, it's a film camera. And I tell him, I say, yeah, I like to shoot black and white film. And he says, well, you can do black and white with a digital camera too, right? Yeah, I give a quick remark and move on. But it did get me thinking, right? It's like what's my better answer to basically the question of why do you shoot film? Why do I shoot film? So this is a longer answer, sort of like let's sit down and have a beer together kind of answer. I might call this video like the 9 reasons why I shoot film. I don't know that I quite have them enumerated like that. A little bit. We'll see. One. I'll pretend like I've numbered these. Number 1. Check out this photo. What do you think of it? I think it's pretty good. I'd be pretty happy with myself if this was my photo. And not just like the composition, which is excellent, but technically, I think it's beautiful. This is 1932, right? Almost 100 years ago. Right, this is Cartier-bresson. So, right, it's like looking at a lot of really old photographs and being amazed by them, and just sort of realizing that the technology hasn't been the limiting factor in a really long time. Right? Basically, the 30s and 40s represents, right, the boom in people doing the kinds of photography that I'm interested in. And then there's just lots of photographers that, right, I would call my favorites. That worked in the film era. Right, from Kudelka, right here he is with his 2 film cameras. Right, and his pictures from like the 60s. Switching to color. Right, here's Allard. And again, these are 35 millimeter shooters, so I'm not talking about large format or medium format. Alex Webb. So then it just like, it just kind of makes you think that like film is plenty capable Now, it's a little bit misleading with some of the color photos because, like, Kodachrome is not around anymore. But Portra is, it's not Kodachrome, but it's a good film. And on the black and white side, right, you can sort of go through and list some classic black and white stocks that aren't there anymore. Verichrome Pan, classic Tri-X. But there are still plenty of really good film stocks on the black and white side. And more coming. New releases. Right. I'm going to take a quick little tangent, an unplanned tangent. That the film space actually has a lot of cool products rolling out. From clever ways to scan to new film products to new film cameras. I'll just say that I don't feel limited by shooting film. A well-exposed, well-developed negative has a ton of play in it. I have a lot of control. Now, another reason I shoot film, back to great photographers, I can think of a dozen or more photographers where they have a large body of work that was on film, and then they switch to digital, and they have a large body of work on digital, right? And I can compare them, and almost always, or always, I prefer their work on film. Joseph Kudelka, Annie Leibovitz, Alex Webb, Salgado. I thought of more. Let's see. Who did I put down here? Moriyama. Harry Grier. Right. It's nice when I have one book that has both in it, and so I can sort of play a game. I played a game just recently with Salgado's work, right? So he switches to digital in the middle of Genesis, and you can, right? It's about half the book, maybe a little more, is digital. So you can just kind of flip through it and see examples. And he's somebody who, right, these are all very established photographers, right, when they're making the switch, and they have a team of, right, they just send their photos back to their team, and their team is they have professional editors that are gonna work on the photos and try to, right, recreate their look. Right, with Salgado, it's like, we're gonna try to make all your digital photos look like Tri-X. Medium format Tri-X, right? So, but even then, right, right, there is a difference. Right, this is film. This is Salgado. That's film. Right, film, 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 film. Aha, digital. Right, film, film, digital, film, digital. Right, you can just tell that's a Canon digital camera. Right, and this is after, right, you have professional editors trying their absolute best to make it look like Tri-X. Now, it's not to say they're not good photos. Right, and I think a lot of photographers would say, well, the content, trumps the medium, right? Back to like, right, this photo is awesome, no matter if it's digital. But if that's true, then just let me shoot film, right? Right. So you ask some of these photographers, like, why did you switch? And it's usually some sort of practical matter, right? It's like, Salgado was like, I was going through airport security, traveling all over the world, and it was nice to switch to digital just to avoid sort of the risk of, right, so maybe a security guard that I don't even speak their language, just going to try to scan my film, my 400 speed film, and or see, you hear someone like Annie say that, like, you can just tell where it's going, right? It's just where we're going is to digital. And right, her work's a little more like, anytime you're just like super concerned with color accuracy and reproducing exact colors, and also to somebody who does portrait work all the time, like something like a really nice autofocus system, right? Those things sort of start to matter at that scale. So I'm not saying like digital's bad, right? It's just not that big of a deal that I choose film, right? It's easy for me to create the content I want, and I'm not running into sort of those practical matters that maybe matter to somebody that's doing this at a large professional scale. And it got me thinking of, like, if I was going to take like a month-long journey on a bicycle, right? Would I take a digital or would I pack 100 rolls of film? I actually don't know the answer to that. I'm like, I might actually load up 100 rolls of film in my bag. The airport security, whatever. We can go down the what ifs, but I will say a little more about maybe my preference for film. Right. I like the look of grain. I like the way that sharpness forms on film. I maybe have an example of that. All right, I like the grain of film. I also like, oh yeah, sorry, got distracted. My son jumped in the room. So here's a photo. This is mine. So not that compositionally great, right? But I really like what the film is doing. You gonna let me? It's not gonna let me zoom right now. Why is that? I don't want the arrow. There we go. Right, I like the grain in the sky. I like these sharp lines and textures. Right, I like the way that there are sharp edges here, but not a lot of fine detail. Right, I like the way that acutance forms here. Right, so there's just properties of film that I really enjoy. Too often, digital photography, to my eye, has way too much micro contrast and fine detail and definition, and it immediately draws you to things like eyelashes. So much so where if you don't have eyelashes in focus, it feels like you've missed the shot. It reminds me of like when high def TVs began, news anchors needed way more makeup because now all of a sudden you could see their skin pores and you could see a drop of sweat come down their forehead. And just that extra resolution and intense detail is very powerful on your eye and what you're drawn to and what you can see and what you're interested in. And for most of what I do, I don't want it. Like, for example, like here's one of, let's see, I had a different one in mind. This one here. So here, like on my son, his eyelashes aren't that sharp. And there's no, like, you can't see like the super minor skin blemishes or whatever. And so you don't get super obsessed with going into the face and looking for those details. And it helps you, start to see sort of like the silver grain and tonality across the face and the bubbles. Right. Now, can you create that with digital? Can you get this effect? I think you can, right? I think someone who really spent a lot of time knowing how to work with, right, clarity and structure and sharpness and right, you could recreate this look, right? But it just comes so easily with film. And right, if I just sort of randomly grabbed 100 digital photos online and 100 random film photos, I just know I'm gonna have a preference for the film photos. I think almost all digital photos are plagued by having way too much fine detail. It's also a reason I like 35 millimeter more than medium format and large format. Now, as I mentioned before, some people will say content trumps. It doesn't matter if it's film or digital. And then I was like, okay, well, that's fine, but that doesn't mean I should shoot digital any more than it means I should shoot film. And I'm going to push back a little bit of like Marshall McLuhan, right, taught us that the medium is the message. Now, I'm not going to go all the way there, but I am going to say that the medium is very important. And for me, right, I am going to sort of, right, if it's a drawing, I'm going to notice, is it a pen or is it a pencil? Right? Maybe what kind of paper is it? Those little details matter a lot to me. Right, I had a photo this week. Let's see, where is it? Speaking of drawings, right? I showed this to people and they were like, "Oh, you drew that?" Well, no, right? This is just a photograph, right? And I'm using the film to get the effect. All right, what number am I on? I think that's like at least, I'm looking at my list, I'm at least at like 2, 3. Next. Right, 10 years ago or so, I just realized I was like filling up my online storage to the point where I was having to pay for more. And right, it was like, it's like weird that my photos were living on like an Amazon cloud server or something. And I wanted to make that switch to like sort of the ultimate source of my photos is something tangible that is in my house that I can hold. And not just because negatives are beautiful, but it's because I want to have it with me, not in the cloud. Let's talk about the cameras and the lenses. When you shoot film, you open up over 100 years of cameras and lenses. Right now you can shoot Canons from the 80s, Nikons from the 60s and 70s, Leicas from the 50s and 60s or 30s. Right now you have maybe all metal, brass. You have smaller lenses with manual focus. What did I think I picked out a couple of cameras here. Right. You could get an old beater like this. A brass beater. You get an even older one like that. Right, and it's sort of like the history is interesting. So you can, not only is it about sort of like this cool thing with nickel and cool sounds and feel to it, but there's a whole history to learn. Right, from just sort of like the history of cameras to SLRs to focus screens to who used what and how it shaped their photography, right? How Robert Frank here, right? This is his camera, right? How did he get his images with this? How did this camera shape the images that he got, assist him in his compositions? Right, it's fun to go down that. Sort of like, it's history, but it's also research. I really like manual focus lenses. Now, Nikon has a new camera out, the ZF, that's sort of, for people that are wanting sort of just a cool camera with like, let's look it up. Right, this is definitely going to pull away some would-be film shooters. Right. For some people where it's really just about like the dials and the body and maybe the sturdiness. And I bet more camera manufacturers will go this route. But that's not the whole story, right? That's just a little part of the story. Manual focus lenses, right? A tab focus, right? That's part of the reason I sort of left Fuji. Was like I liked the image quality quite a bit at the time, at least, but I wasn't satisfied with the manual focus. Right? It was like focus by wire, and I was like, this I really do want to get to manual focus. Right, and some of that was like studying Robert Frank's photos and realizing the value of maybe being out of focus or to focus on something very unexpected, or even just like that things aren't perfectly nailed, right? Sort of like a beauty in that imperfection. And it doesn't have to be expensive, right? I showed you a camera that costs a fortune, right? I shot some this week, right? Let's see. This shot right here, this shot. you could buy, this is a Canon AE1 program, right? Like a $200 camera at this point. Value going up. Let's see, this one. This is like a $75 camera. An Exacta, an Exa1C. All right, so it doesn't have to be expensive. You don't have to go like the classic Leica route. This is a Zeiss. All right. But if you do want to go the classic Leica route, there's a lot of treasures, right? The Leica cameras are amazing. The M2, the M3, the M4, the MA, the MP, the M6, the M7, right? The Minolta CLE, the Zeiss Icon. And I mean, I'm just barely scratching it, right? I got, a book of all the cameras basically ever made. It's thousands of beautiful film cameras. Now, there's a little bit of like maybe a counter argument that it's hard to get one that's in really good working condition that doesn't have any problems. Good point. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I have a handful of film cameras, and they all basically work. Right? I occasionally have hiccups and have to deal with getting them serviced, but there's a little bit of like, once you start getting into this, most people get gas and end up buying way too many cameras and way too many lenses, and that's sort of true if you choose digital or film. But there's something nice about just not getting caught up in sort of the newest technology and thinking that I need the newest sensor, the newest lenses, the newest, and just saying like, what I need came 70 years ago, right? And I just need to like stop. I get a little less, caught up in sort of what we think of as like, right, the next technology that's just going to somehow make everything better for us. Now here's Robert Frank shooting his camera. This one's actually, it is a Barnack Leica, but it's a little different, right, in some of his famous photos. Right, the power of that little external finder, the ability to help you find compositions. Well, now let's switch to the film for a second. Our film doesn't really do well past like a speed of 800, 1600. And right, most film thrives around like 100, 200, 400. And what it sort of ends up, even if you have a fast lens, right, it means that you're probably shooting in more light, daylight. If you're inside, there's probably window light, maybe dawn and dusk, but probably more on the sunlight side of things. And right, not so much like, right, with digital photography now, we can shoot at 3200, 6400 or beyond. And for me personally, like one thing I really need in my life is to be out in the sunshine more. And so it helps me. It helps me get out on walks. It helps me be outside. And it also makes me much more perceptive and aware of the beauty of sunlight. And right, it reminds me of like Ansel Adams said, like the most beautiful light is just open sky. And I'll maybe qualify that of just like the sky, right? What the sky can do is incredible. And right? I don't know if I have it. I don't have it ready, but the light that you could get, and just going outside and studying the difference of like a big blue sky and sort of where your good photos typically fall in that situation versus maybe an overcast versus a side light sky or some partly cloudy, right? Or if you're downtown and there's all these kind of buildings and light bouncing, and then if let's say you're in shade or open shade or dappled light, and right, all of that knowledge and awareness of right what's happening outside and with because of the sun, right, I need more of that in my life. So, and that's the kind of photography I want to be doing. I don't need to shoot dark scenes, right? Some people do, but I don't. And I've really enjoyed sort of that bias that it gets me out there into the sunlight. All right, where are we? We'll call it number 5, number 6. Let's pull up a photo. Stephen Shore, his film work, it's a little like, I love his film work, absolutely. But right, he was shooting large format Kodachrome. Now, but he didn't always, right? He actually did shoot some 35 millimeter Kodachrome too. So that's interesting to sort of go back through some of his earlier work when he was still working on 35 millimeter. Here, I'll pull up one of my photos next. How about this one? Yeah, let's get in there to 100%, eh? Film photography is really hard, and I've made a lot of mistakes. I've shot a whole roll that didn't turn out that the roll was actually turning, so I got 0 shots. I've accidentally opened my camera out in the daylight with the roll not rewound yet. I've failed to get the film onto the reel and butchered it. It starts to feel like there's so many steps to going from your photo to getting an image, and you sort of have to, I don't want to say carry it like a baby the whole way through, but it's there's a lot more that you have to, just a lot more skill development and a lot more being careful and being intentional, and especially until you get good at it, right? And it's sort of fun, right? It's sort of fun, and it's always sort of painful in the moment when you lose the photos, but it's like, okay, I'm gonna learn how to get past this. I'm gonna master it, and I'm gonna not do it anymore. And so it forces you to grow, and right, much more than like just a digital camera where you just kind of turn it on and you click the button and then you can see it on the back. It's like, it is hard. It's a little bit like fishing, right? Who likes to go fishing in a well-stocked pond where you just immediately catch a fish, right? Some of what makes it fun and interesting is that it's sort of like challenging and hard. So, and I would say that like, because it's so hard, I often make mistakes. But it's amazing how often those mistakes turn into something like this. Right? This was actually really underexposed, but I ended up getting this, and I actually like this more than I would if I had kind of done it the way I intended. So, more happy accidents. Now, before I switched over to film, right, I was shooting a lot of Fuji cameras with an EVF. And somewhere in there, I just sort of realized that I didn't want to see my family through a screen, right? If I was going to take a picture of them, I wanted, I could accept that maybe a piece of glass was between us, but I want to see them. And I really like the rangefinder because of that, like because it's so easy to get it out from your eye. Just like boop, it's away from your eye. But then also I'm looking through glass. I'm not looking through the lens. I'm looking through just a little bit of glass. So it helps me feel a connection and to feel like I'm not sticking something between me and my family. And also, like, I don't want to take a picture and immediately see it. For a lot of people, that's a comfort of like, did I make focus? Did I have get a good exposure? Did I get my photo so I can move on? Right? I would rather skill build and know that I hit my focus and I got my exposure through building skill and saying, yep, I got it. And then not seeing my image until later. I don't want to show it to anybody. I don't want to look at it. I don't want it to become the thing that I do next. And I want to, right, I actually like having at least a day or a week to look at the pictures. It helps me not think that every photo is interesting or to get caught up in like, somehow I'll have a digital camera and I'll take 2,000 photos and like 95% of them are garbage. Or just like playing around with like my lenses and looking, kind of getting into the sharpness and just being amazed at sort of the technological accomplishments that they're capable of. Right? When I take a picture with a film camera, it's like there's nothing to see. Just move on, next picture. Later on, I'll get to see them in a place where I'm probably in a better space to actually sort of edit down. Maybe a little bit of like, sometimes it helps when I'm taking pictures of people to kind of show them a picture to be like, hey, look, I'm actually a good photographer, right? And these are nice photos and you look good. And that can help sort of help them relax or something. Or, but with my kids, like it's mostly sort of help them sort of, right? There's no expectation of like, show me the picture or I want to see. Right, it's like, oh, that's Dad's film camera, right? We'll see it in a few days. And if I want it to be fast, like because I do my own development, I can actually turn pictures around, right, same day. So it's not, if I really need it to be, yeah, I can't like text it a minute later, but that night I can. Now, speaking of, right, not having the EVF, right, I want to strengthen my ability to visualize in my mind, right? Not with the camera up to my eye, right? I want to be able to look around and find compositions and to see my photo in my mind. Right? I don't want any dependency on the camera. Right? At some point it was nice to have like the EVF and to sort of compose in black and white, right? I went through years of that. But sort of the more I've gotten better at visualizing the photos, right, the less I want an EVF or an LCD to be sort of the crutch that prevents me from strengthening my imagination. All right, next. It takes, right, I only get 36 shots in a roll. I've got to develop it. I've got to scan it. I try not to take garbage shots. It's a waste of my time. A lot of the times when I see a shot and I put the camera up to my eye, I'm like, is this worth it? And about half of the time, I don't take the picture. Right? It's how I can, instead of, over a weekend getting 2,000 photos, I may only get 100. Right? that's the difference between digital and film. Now, some people can just develop that discipline, right? Now, I like the chemistry component of doing my own developing, right? I think there's a lot of overlap between like um, people who enjoy home brewing coffee and maybe roasting their own coffee, um, and people who like to develop their own photos at home. Right, sort of that hands-on, the measuring, the chemicals, the ratios. I just enjoy. I work at the computer all day, so I enjoy having a break where I can go down and standing and moving around, kind of work, develop film. Um, right, the inversions and the pouring and yeah, I'm not going to work out, but it's a nice kind of physical rhythm, um, right? And I enjoy thinking about the chemistry, right? So it's a hands-on, um, right, organic, analog experience that I actually find is a nice thing. Now, I could imagine someday that I'm going to get tired of, right, um, inverting my tanks, right, or I might get tired of, I think that's when I think way down the line of like, when am I just going to switch to digital? It's probably when I just get old and tired, right, and I just can't. There's going to be parts of the process that start to wear on me a little bit, um, and I'll just be interested in kind of taking the easy way out. Now, I think I'm down to like the last one or two reasons that I thought of. Um, okay, I know there's like the internet is full of photography forums and photography groups, and I find that by sort of focusing in on other people interested in film and also sort of the same cameras I'm interested in, right, it quickly brings me to a group of people that are um, sort of like-minded and have similar, right, sort of the Magnum photography agency or group, right, that collection of photographers and their body of work, right. um, right, not all of them shot with like a rangefinders, but a lot of them did, right, and that's that style of photography. um, right, it's sort of like brings me to other photographers quickly that might appreciate my style of photography and that I will like theirs too. Um, and like, people will find out that like, oh, he likes photography. Daniel likes photography. And, but it's like, I do, but I also don't, right? It's like somebody who's like someone who loves wine or someone who loves coffee, right? At some point they start to really enjoy a very small part of the wine world, a very unique, specialized part, and the rest starts to not be that interesting anymore. Right, and the same thing has happened with me in photography, where a lot of photography is actually not interesting to me at all. Right, anytime I'm working and like the Microsoft Windows like background pops up, I mean, I never like those, right? I'm just like, it's like vomit. Um, and that's basically how I feel about most photos that I would see on, right, most photography groups and things. It's like that's not what I'm interested. I know I like photography and I like photos, but it's not that, right? And so, um, right, sort of like going down this film rabbit hole, right, and kind of the vintage cameras and lenses. has connected me with like the Leica Discord group and some other little groups of people that are interesting and good photographers, in my opinion. So let me just check my list real quick and see if I've missed anything. All right, there's maybe one more thing, right? That often when I tell people I shoot film, there's this quick assumption that I work in the darkroom. Like, oh, you must make prints in the darkroom. And I don't actually. I mean, I occasionally do. I might in the future, right? But like, I don't really consider that my short-term goal, and maybe not even my long-term goal, right? I'm very happy just scanning my images, and like, I think that, right, my audience, in addition to like me, right, it's like, it may be people that are just online. It may just be people that watch YouTube, and that might be what I'm after, right? I can imagine, I have somebody who watches my videos and they use an Apple Vision Pro headset, and right, I do record these in 4K, and I know that's like, it's like, imagine blowing these things up to like movie screen size in your virtual reality headset and seeing these as giant images. And I want them to, I say it's like that's maybe the display space, right? And something about like making my photographs available to anybody across the world who has like YouTube, right? That's sort of interesting, right? It's like, I don't know that I need to just run to the darkroom, and film doesn't do that, right? Scanning images has gotten so accessible to a home photographer, right? A hobbyist like me, right? And software like Capture One or Lightroom or Adobe or whatever you use, right? It's the stuff's so powerful and easy to learn. Right now, will I? Let's pause for a minute, right? Am I ever going to get interested in medium format and large format and printing in the darkroom? Who knows? Maybe, right? To a large extent, it's always just about what motivates you and sort of what fits into your life. Like right now, I'm a dad. I stay at home a lot. I work from home. I'm taking care of my kids. So I have some time to develop, right? And it's actually good for my kids to see me in the dark, like developing film and doing something hands-on, as opposed to just sort of sitting at a screen or just kind of holding my digital camera and looking at. It's like, right? It's also better just for my soul. And who knows what it'll be in 3 years or 5 years. All right, is there anything else I want to say? Right, I personally really enjoy going through all the different film stocks and sort of seeing how double X is different from something like FP4, right? And the impact of developers, right? That's a fun thing for me to do. So yeah, I don't shoot digital. I do have a digital camera for scanning. If somebody gave me an M11, I would use it some. And I mostly do black and white, right? And if I was going to get interested in color, right, I would probably want to start by shooting all the color film stocks and giving that a chance. Yeah. All right. Man, if you've hung in there, right, I owe you a beer or something. Speaking of beer, I'm not going to go get one. I'm going to go get, what? A cookie. Yeah, I'm going to go get a cookie. Right, take care.